People talk a lot about how much money scam victims lose. They talk about how the scam happened. They talk about what the victim should have done differently. What we don't talk nearly enough about is what happens to the person afterwards. Now, on August 12th, I was the victim of a pretty sophisticated cryptocurrency scam, and I lost more than $180,000. Now, since then, I've replayed the entire thing over and over again, and I've been angry, embarrassed, frustrated, ashamed. I've questioned my own judgment. I've worried about what other people think, and I've had to keep functioning while dealing with investigators, law enforcement, passwords, accounts, financial issues, and all the other things that suddenly come with being scammed. Now, the more I've gone through it, the more I've realized how little support there is for this part of the experience, the emotional and psychological side of this. There's endless information about how to avoid scams and how to protect yourself and how to recognize warning signs, and all of that matters. But what happens when it's too late? What happens when the money is already gone? What happens when you wake up the next morning and have to figure out how to live with what just happened? Because for some people, the aftermath gets very dark. Fraud victims deal with shame and depression, isolation and despair, and some reach a point where they consider doing something irreversible. And this is the part that I can't stop thinking about. And it's why I decided to create a series called After the Shock, navigating the emotional aftermath of being scammed. I want to talk honestly about what happens after a scam, not just from my perspective. I want to talk with other victims. I want to bring in psychologists and researchers. I want to talk with experts who understand fraud and trauma and shame and grief and recovery. And I want to create something that a person can find in those first terrible hours and days after realizing what's happened to them. Something that says, look, you're not the only person who has gone through this. You're not the only person replaying every decision. And this moment doesn't have to define the rest of your life. Now, right now, I'm sitting in the studio where I would love to produce this series, and the owner, he was kind enough to let me use it today so I could record this video and show you what I'm trying to build, or at least give you a glimpse. But producing this properly, it costs money. The studio costs money, production costs money, editing costs money, research and expert conversations, getting videos out in front of people, all of that costs money. So I created this fundraiser, and I want to be very clear about something. I'm not asking you to replace the $180,000 that was stolen from me. That's my loss. I'm asking for help turning what happened to me into something that might help somebody else. Maybe somebody watches one of these conversations and finally understands that what they're feeling is normal. Maybe a family member watches and understands why someone they love is behaving differently after being scammed. Maybe someone who is too ashamed to tell anybody what happened realizes they're not alone. And maybe someone sitting by themselves in a pretty dark place finds one of these videos at exactly the right moment. Now, if this series helps even one person decide not to do something drastic, if it helps one person get through another night, then I'll consider it worth doing. That's what After the Shock is all about. So if you believe this conversation needs to exist, I'd appreciate your help building it. The scammers, look, they took my money. Right? I don't want them to take this part of the story too. And maybe we can make sure they don't take something much more important from somebody else.